how do you get people interested in learning about the ocean? We're going to be the focus of today's episode on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. We're going to be talking to Javan Hunt, who is a songwriter, an artist, and working with a nonprofit organization that teaches kids to learn about their own backyard in Bahamas and understand how the ocean plays such an important role in not only in their protection, but in conservation as well as biodiversity. We're going to talk about that all in today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. This is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And today's episode is a great one. We are talking to Javan Hunt, who is an artist, a music recording artist, a songwriter, an environmentalist, and somebody who works with a nonprofit organization that works with young children to discuss how important the ocean plays a role in their lives, and it allows them to reconnect to their backyard. And we discuss a lot of different things, including taking for granted what we have in our own backyard, including myself here in Canada. We have a lot of green spaces, we have a lot of blue spaces, and a lot of the times I sit in my house, I sit on my phone, and I'm scrolling to find out what's happening in the world, realizing that I have, or not realizing that I have a beautiful place just in my own backyard, and I need to look at more. And I feel the same way that Javan does in terms of getting people out and connecting with nature so that nature becomes an important part of their thoughts. It becomes part of our culture. It becomes part of ways to realize that the environment is important to us, not only for our protection, to provide food and to provide peace is really what it comes down to. So we're going to talk about Javan in just a moment. If you want more information like this and you want to find out more about how you can protect the ocean, you can go to our website, speakupforblue.com. That's speakupforblue.com. But here's the interview with Javan Hunt. Enjoy the interview, and I'll talk to you after. Hey, Javan, welcome to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about music and ocean conservation?
I am ready.
Right on. I'm very, very excited about this. I think this is the first time where I have somebody on the podcast who is combining music and entertainment with ocean conservation, and also on the island of the Bahamas, the beautiful Bahamas. And I can't wait to dive into this. We're going to talk about why music is important, why you incorporate music, how you got into music, but also how your relationship with the ocean has stemmed from being a young boy in the Bahamas all the way to now being a grown man, teaching it to others, and making sure that's an important part of their education, an important part of sort of their lifestyle. So I'm looking really, really forward to learning more about that. But before we get into all that, Javan, why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
As you said, Andrew, first off, thank you for having me on your platform. I am thrilled to be here. Like you said, my name is Javan Hunt. I'm from the island of Grand Bahama, which is in the Bahamas. For those of you that don't know, the Bahamas is an archipelago. There's over 700 islands in the Bahamas, with about 30 to 40 being inhabited. Typically people only hear about an island in the Bahamas when like a celebrity buys an island or something like that. But there's a lot that's inhabited, 30 to 40, like I said. We're a small population. Like I said, I grew up on the island of Grand Bahama. I've always been into music, the environment. I grew up basically outside, typical island family. Our parents would just shoo us outside to entertain ourselves.
Gotcha.
They'd say, just boy, go outside and play. So typically we spend the majority of our days outside, playing ball, playing anything that could be played. I could actually remember the first time we got like cable, which was like in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Typically we had those antennas that you'd have to go outside and
Yes.
spin it. So we had no entertainment like that. We had no phones or well, we did have a rotary phone, but
Yes. The rotary
I
phone, yes.
watched technology progress over the
Yep.
years. And now everyone has a cell phone in their hand. Go figure. But anyway, but I was always into music. My family is a musical family. They all played in bands and such. We sang in church. And eventually I progressed to want to take it further. I performed a lot of places in theater, again, my own band and stuff. And I, through a series of events, ended up somehow I ended up into the environmental field, and I never saw it coming. I just never saw it coming, right? Um, a big part of who I am now is I love to mentor. So I always
Hmm.
mentored again in church groups and stuff. And I ended up being a part of a youth environmental program.
Hmm.
And through that, I was introduced to the whole world of advocacy and learning and teaching about the environment. Like things that I took for granted, it was like, oh my gosh, this is important.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was in that shoe where I didn't know a thing, or I took it for granted. You know, see those beaches that people love to say the Bahamas is known for? I
Hmm.
live on the beach, so I didn't see it
Right.
as nothing that's so important. It's just a beach, you
Right.
know. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it just baffled me when I saw like tourists or, um, especially we have a lot of Canadians that come down and have second
Yeah.
homes, especially during the winter season.
Oh
Oh my
yes.
gosh, when they come and for us in our winter season, quote unquote,
Hmm. Hmm.
we're wearing jackets. We have, with the fur. We can't wait for the cold so that we can put on our boots because you only can do it like one weekend out of the whole year. And here's the Canadians, and they're jumping in the water like, oh, this feels so good, and we're thinking these crazy people. Like that
Yeah.
water is cold and it's like
Yeah.
70 something degrees. Like that's super cold to us. And they're like, oh, we just left us, we were snowed in and we're hurting to see snow and they're running away from it. So, in our mind, young boys' mind,
Yeah.
we're thinking, no, these people are crazy,
Yeah.
crazy tourists. And so anyway, I ended up learning so much about the environment, learning so much about the things that make us special,
Yeah.
learning so much about all the things that we take for granted, like conch and the different
Hmm.
varieties of fish that we can just go and have. And it's not until we speak to people from other parts of the USA, Canada, and all the other parts of the world, to learn that they have to get a permit to fish, or to learn that, hey,
Mm.
you can only catch so much fish in a fishing trip, and there's someone to watch you as they measure your fish to make sure it's the right length. Whereas in the Bahamas, anyone can just go with a cooler and some fishing line and catch a
Right.
whole cooler of fish because there's such an abundance of it. Well,
Hmm.
it wasn't until I went into advocacy and learning more about the environment to learn how all of the like construction and coastal construction and businesses and how that affects the
Yeah.
ocean. It wasn't until I got into this that I realized how the ocean is our livelihood. The things that we took for granted, like the salt water, the seawater, the being able to swim. Like we're such what's it called, snobs when it comes to beaches. Like
Right.
I've visited both coasts of the U.S. and they're saying, "Oh, let's go to the beach," and I go, "Okay, let's go to the beach."
Yeah.
And to have close friends warn me now, when you get to this beach, don't act brand new. Don't act like, because you're used to seeing through the water. You won't be able to
Right.
see through this water. And I'm like, it
Right.
can't be that bad. Only to go to the
Yeah.
beach, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not getting in that. I'm like,
Can't
why?
see.
I can't see my feet. You have to see Jaws coming in order to run from Jaws. Or what was really shocking for me, being an island boy again, the dark sand. Like I remember
Mm.
being in Rhode Island on the coast, and
Yeah.
I'm like, is this real sand? Like I thought it was fake. And
Yeah.
they're like, I'm the only guy there just digging in the sand, and a whole crowd is forming. Like, why is this guy just digging in the sand like this? Because I'm like, you have sparkles in your sand. Like, this is so cool,
Yeah.
you know. Versus, I was used to powder sand.
Of
You
course.
know,
Yeah.
it it gets everywhere. So to us, it's annoying. To tourists, they're like doing like snow angels. You know. Long
Yeah,
story
you're like, this is
short,
gonna get all over the house. It's gonna get everywhere. All my
it's
clothes.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
crevice that you can imagine. It's there. So we get used to that stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm on an island and I think my beaches are great, but then some other islands have even less of a population and they're untouched. Like no one's on the
Mm.
beach. To us, if like 10 people is on the beach, I'm like, oh, it's too crowded. Let's go to another beach.
Right. Right.
Versus I'm going to this beach and you have to like tip around people. It's so
There's
much
so many
folks.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and then, it's all new to me, so it's all eye-opening and stuff. I see these huge seagulls. I've never seen them that huge because they're not that huge,
Right.
by us, and they're like fighting people for food. Like, hey,
Yeah.
give me this
Yeah. Yeah. They're
sandwich.
aggressive. Yeah. They'll take it out of your hand to some of them. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to say it was an experience, it
Yeah.
really was an experience. But I'm all over the place. But when I started doing a lot more environmental work and working with the children, and I saw that the best way that I could teach them is through what I know, which is music. And
Mm,
I kind of stumbled into that as well. Um, I kind of stumbled into that as well, but I needed to find a song or write a song as a teaching tool. And I
right.
wrote a couple, and I was a little, not ashamed, but I was a little shy to show
Yeah.
it.
Of course.
But when I did, everybody's like, okay, okay, I see you,
Like
I see
bopping
it,
to it.
you
Yeah.
know. And then I had to come up with a simplified version, which is what
Hmm.
I taught you earlier.
Yes.
And if you don't
Yes.
mind, I could do it with anyone
Absolutely. Please
listening.
do.
So the simplified version is I use it for preschoolers and young kids, sixth grade and under, but I found that the adults love it even more. But they like to
Hmm.
pretend like they don't. So I
Yep.
get them clapping, clap. Mangroves, mangroves near the sea. Mangroves protect you and me. Four types here and it's all good. Red, black, white, and buttonwood. And then I get them like, okay, when I say four types here, I want you to say it with me.
Yeah.
So come on, and four types here and it's all good. Come on, Andrew. Red, black, white, and
White and
buttonwood.
button wood.
And so it's so catchy.
It is
It's
catchy.
so
It is
catchy.
catchy. I'm probably gonna
But
sing it later on after
I
this.
know. But I love it because we get you talking about
Yeah.
the four types of mangroves that are here in the Bahamas. And then, after they get that little piece, then I'm able to go in depth a little bit about each one of those mangroves and why it's important and why, a lot of the fish species and stock come to the mangroves to have their young. So if we destroy the mangroves or if they're destroyed, then these fish, these, mammals or these animals have nowhere to go to bring their
Mm,
young, which is a direct reflection on our food source. So if those are destroyed, the things that you like to eat, they're not there anymore. So conch,
exactly.
the
Yeah.
fish, and
Yeah.
sometimes when we go into the mangroves, we see so many turtles in there. We see a lot of bird species,
So
some fish
important.
jumping out of the water. Like it is amazing when you go there. Like it is, I can't even begin to describe how peaceful it is in
Hmm.
areas where people don't go.
Right.
And yeah, and when you see the land being built because the mangroves tend to attract a lot of sediment, and you see these little islands forming, and when we get people out there for the like minute or two, or for the 30 minutes, or for however long they're out there, we see the shift happening. We
Mm,
see them saying like, oh, okay, this is important. Okay, this is a good reason why we should protect this area.
yep.
Because I'm sure it's the same for you and everyone else listening, that we tend to have our habits. We go from work to home,
Yep.
grocery store, if you have children, to PTAs and all that stuff, and that
Hmm.
tends to become your world, and you kind of block out. You're in your own bubble. So
Yeah.
what we do is we, through fun ways and through different ways, reach the audience so that we can tell them like, hey, I know you're in your bubble, but let's take 5 minutes to sing a song. Let's take 5 minutes to see how important this ecosystem is to us. Let's
Yeah.
take 10 minutes, and then we attract them to our youth program, which then goes in depth. And I'm proud to say that in our 13th year, we were able to get a lot of the Bahamian students interested in environmental careers, and a lot of
Yeah.
them are choosing to learn more and come back and teach. So it's having some sort of impact, which
Love
is
it.
even great, better, and stuff. And also those who just trapped in their everyday bubble, they're able
Hmm.
to just think outside of the box and say, okay, this is important. Okay, let me not litter or my
Yeah.
environment. Okay,
Yeah.
I bought this property. I don't have to tear down every single tree that's on this property. So just to get them thinking along that
Just
lines and making small choices leads to
it's
bigger
so
results.
important. 100%. It's so important to get people connected back to the ocean. I mean,
Yeah.
even we talk about that here in North America all the time, Canada, US.
Hmm.
You're right. We're always just in our own little bubble, and I
Hmm.
have to go to the grocery store. Now I have to go bring our kids to here. Now I got to go here. Now I go here. And a lot of the times we don't even take the time out of the day, just be like, I live in a pretty cool place. You know, like I
Yep.
live in a place where there's lots of trees, lots of greenery, and I
Yes.
just kind of pass by it because I have to go do some stuff. And if we
Hmm.
don't take time out of our day or time out of our week to go and connect with nature, in your case, like in Bahamas case, you know, the ocean,
Hmm.
and enjoy what you see around there, it takes, you know, you can just bypass, and you lose that connection, that want, and that understanding of why it's important to protect the
Yep.
ocean, unless some disaster comes by and you realize how important it's
Yep.
needed, and you're like, well, what happened to these programs and stuff? But the lack of that connection takes away that memory of this is an important part. You know,
Hmm.
having mangroves, you know, having coral reefs, having seagrasses are very important in tropical systems to protect the coastline. And
Hmm.
without that connection, without bringing people in, and I think it's really interesting because we talk about it a lot. You know, we go away uh, to the tropics. We go
Hmm.
away because we love the water, we love the beach. Like we go, I'm like that tourist, right? If I went to the Bahamas, I'm out there and like it's 70 degrees and the water's like probably 60, and I'm like, yes, I'm in. Like let's do it. And you're on the beach, being like, what is wrong with this guy? But it's because you just love it so much, and it's
Yeah.
such a different part of your own. Like it's not your country. You're in a different country. It's warm, what you're normally used to, and it's such an important part. But a lot of times we talk about, you know, going somewhere to reconnect with the ocean, like going to the Bahamas or going to Hawaii or going, you know, other places. But when the people that live there, it's so important for the people who live on those islands, and even like
Hmm.
for me to live in Canada, to not take for granted the nature that's around me, but especially for you. When you first started building the program or getting the idea to build the program, was it difficult to recruit people from the Bahamas, like Bahamians, to come out, and like even the kids, to get people to have permission to come out and connect with the ocean? Was that a challenging process for you?
Yes, it was. The first, I want to say the first 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
we had students that wanted to keep coming back because we
Right.
were developing the program. And when we went to all of the schools and gave the letters and such, no one was really interested because they didn't know what we were about.
Of course.
And and so
Starting
when we
off, yeah.
said like, hey, this is an environmental organization, we were lucky that one of our senior members, he was a principal at a high school for over like 20 years. So he knew all of the teachers, and he just bully his way inside that, like, hey, I'm doing this environmental program and we
Yeah.
have to help Mother Earth. So you're
Yes.
signing up. And they'd be like, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so,
Because they trust him
and,
too, right? They
yeah,
trusted him
because
too.
he had a great reputation.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of folks that signed up, and then you have to work with parents. And
Mm,
because of his reputation and the reputation of the team, they said, you know what, we're gonna keep our children coming back because it looks like
gotcha.
they're doing a lot. We were able to, once they graduate from the youth program, we had a cadet program where one of the requirements is that they get scuba certified.
Oh,
And
nice.
so we get them in the water, and they have to go in the water, and it's like, okay, okay, it's good. It's good. And as some of the facilitators, we also had to get scuba certified.
Of course.
Yeah, so we wanted the children to go in there, so we had to do it as well. It's my first time, and of course I was nervous. I was
Yeah.
nervous. I was so nervous. I won't even lie, Andrew.
Well, breathing
I was so
underwater is
nervous.
not natural. Let's be honest, right? It's not natural.
I know, and then we watch those movies,
Yeah.
like Jaws, and there's one particular place called Shark Junction,
Right.
which we had to dive, and
Yeah.
so I'm trying to say to my folks, my family, like, how do I tell them that I'm going to willingly scuba dive with sharks without alarming them? So I'm like, hey y'all, just wanted to say I love you, and with
Don't want to
with
worry you.
a
Nothing to worry about. I'm
with a
fine.
tremble in my voice. And when we got out there, the sharks were like, oh, humans. Like, it was like we were intruding on their territory, but they didn't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
And the instructors were so cool. They taught me in a way that I needed to learn. And they got a few pictures of sharks in the background with me, not even noticing them there. And I'm like, you know what? Thank God y'all didn't tell me turn around, because I don't know what would have happened,
Yeah.
but it might have been embarrassing. But After 5 dives and I got certified, it was like, okay, it's nothing to fear. And I
Right.
was able to even get back into the classroom and say, hey, it's even more reason for us to protect our reefs, protect our
Mm-hmm.
oceans, because underwater is a completely different
Oh,
world and it's so beautiful.
so
Just
different.
just imagine being underwater with all of those colors and all those coral reefs and like all of the colors on the fish. I felt like I was seeing Dory from what's that?
Yeah,
Yeah, finding Dory.
100%.
I felt like I found Dory.
A number
You
of
know?
times, probably.
A number of times, yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and just all of the misconceptions I had about sharks and rays, and there's a guy here called the Stingray Whisperer, and I've done his tour like 3 times, and he showed us how to safely interact with wildlife,
Mm,
and you know what I mean, and it was like, oh my God, all of these years people were telling me that, hey, you saw what's happened to Steve Irwin, don't get next to those
mm-hmm.
dangerous
Yeah,
wild
don't pick them
animals.
up. Yeah,
But I'm thinking though, like, why would you want to intrude into their space
mm,
without doing it in a safe way, So it
of
just
course.
led me to think about things in a different way, and it's just my whole world changed. My whole world changed. But back to to answer your question, it was a little bit difficult at first,
Yeah,
but after the parents and the wider community saw that, um, hey, these children are getting some amazing opportunities. We had different folks come out, and now the current generation, they're more interested in choosing environmental careers, so they're finding
nice.
us.
Yes.
you know
Yeah, they're coming back to teach, which I
yeah,
think is great because that's even more of an opportunity to mentor because they become leaders then, right?
yes,
And so they're able to lead other children to go, and then they learn how to be leaders. So whether they stay in environmental jobs or not, it's become a big part of their lives. Plus,
yes.
they've had an opportunity to lead, which I think is such a as a I'm a sports coach, a hockey and football coach, so I find that
Nice.
it's such an important part of a kid's development, right?
Hmm.
Is to understand what it means to lead, and a lot of kids don't get an opportunity to
uh
do that, right? Which is so this is wonderful. Now I have to ask, like, you were nervous at first when you started scuba diving, which everybody is. I was as well.
yeah.
When you scuba dive now, what's the difference?
um it's still a little nervous at first,
Yeah,
but that's just me anytime I get in the water. But once you get in it, it's such a calming
yeah,
feel to be there. Like I said, it's a whole different world.
it's like a brand
And
new world.
yeah, all of the
Yeah.
worries and the stresses that we carry around with us, once you're
Mm-hmm.
submerged in that water and you look up, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm 20 feet in water and I'm looking up. And it's like the only thing you can hear is your heartbeat.
Yeah.
And the calmer you are, the less oxygen you use. So I try
Yeah.
to calm myself even more. And it feels so graceful to just be in the water, just floating and just exploring. Sometimes the instructors have to tell us, like, hey, stay with your buddy,
Yeah. You get
don't wander
distracted.
off, because you get so caught up that
Yeah,
you lose track of time.
for
And
sure.
one person in particular, again, the elderly gentleman, my boss, who is the ex principal, he's in his 80s, and we have to put a tag on him because he's gone. He's just gone. I'm like, come back, But then you have to be careful because the hand signals, they're
Yeah.
thinking it's something else, so you have to be trying to stick close to your partner and just
Right.
explore together. But
Yeah.
I felt like I learned a brand new part of the Bahamas that few people get to see,
Oh,
being
100%.
underwater.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a big part of it. Not a lot of people know what it's like underwater, and you're right. It's like a completely different world. When we talk a lot about connecting and making sure that kids and their parents understand more about the ocean, how important it is
Hmm.
to protect, and how important it is to take care of that time. What is, like, for the average Bahamian who lives in on your island, like Grand Bahamas,
Hmm.
what is sort of the outlook of of the beach and of the ocean? Was it similar to you where they just take it a little for granted and they don't go in the water as much because it's always there and they get caught up in in their own lives?
Yes, that's still the sentiment. Like I told you earlier, I had that same mentality. Like
Yeah,
I live on the beach.
right,
The beach is literally 2 minutes away from me. Like I'm at the front of my property, and at the back is my beach.
right.
And it's like, no Bahamian would willingly want to live on the beach.
Really?
And
So
it
that's not
might
like
sound
prize land.
shocking. It is
Yeah,
prize land, especially for those who like are landlocked.
yeah,
And when people tend to build in the Bahamas and they're from a place that's landlocked, they want to live on the beach. But
right.
for the average Bahamian, they do not want to live on the beach
Mm,
because salt water corrodes everything.
yes.
You'll
Yeah,
be changing your fixtures and fittings
yeah,
yearly.
yeah.
You have to park in a garage because then your car will get all eaten up by the salt, sandflies,
Mm-hmm.
all that different stuff.
It's all the
But
stuff you never think about not living on the beach, right? You don't
yeah,
think about having salt water just in the air that comes and the salt comes over. It'll
yeah,
just like sand, it'll find its way over and get all the stuff you don't want to get.
yeah. And in the Bahamas, there's a unique way for people to tell. Like they can look at anyone and they like for example, they look at me and they'll say, "You're in the salt water a lot." And then I know why they say that because salt water bleaches your hair. It turns your hair like brown.
Oh.
So we know the fishermen. We know all of the folks
Oh,
who were in the
interesting.
water because it
Okay.
turns your hair brown, like it bleaches it.
Yeah.
I get a lot of folks ask me like, "Hey, did you bleach your hair?" I'm like, "No.
No.
Why would I
Why
bleach?
would I do
Like,
that?
we don't do
Yeah.
that. But if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Like you get in the water and it bleaches your hair. So a lot of my hair is that brown
Yeah.
that's very, with going in the salt water. So
Yeah.
all of the fishermen, they have like light brown hair because they're in the water daily. Like for
Right.
me, I might be in the water weekly, especially in the summertime, but they're
Mm-hmm.
in the water every day year round.
Wow.
And so I find also that the younger folks, um, they're mostly in the water in the summertime, just like
Yep.
us,
Yep.
up until like October or so when it
Right.
gets a little bit nippy.
Yep.
But they also take it for granted. And so unless they're doing some type of TikTok or some type of something, or even partying on the beach, because
Yes.
that happens a lot too.
Of
That's
course.
the only time people really go to the beach.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's cool. That's so cool. Now, the music aspect of your life is a big part, as you mentioned. Your family's very musical. You're
Yeah.
very musical. You incorporate into these environmental programs. How big of a part is it when you go into these schools? Like, do you is it come in? You bring your guitar, you sing, and or a keyboard or whatever, and you sing, and that's most of the program, or like how does it incorporate it?
So it depends on what the school wants, and it
Okay.
depends on how much time we have. Normally, we block out like a 45-minute session with students.
Okay.
If I have the young ones, if I have primary school level children, I won't take any instruments or anything or bring along my crew. We'll just do that same song and we'll engage. Like we have at work, we wrote this storybook about Manny the mighty mangrove and Mani's adventure, you know, Mani's adventure in the mangrove, how he grew up, and all that stuff. So I would
Love it.
typically have story time and
Yep.
I'd read it in a very animated way,
Of
with
course.
dramatic hand gestures and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and I'd culminate with a song. So my thing is, I call myself a storyteller, an
Mm-hmm.
environmental storyteller, and um, rhythm and blues, or like just a storyteller, period. And
Yeah.
so I have to bring this story alive and communicate this story in a way that my audience could understand. So the younger they are, the more wild and I have to make this story big and get it to
Right.
stick. And
Right.
so we would do songs and I would call them up and say, okay, now you sing it with me. Now let's do this side. You sing it with me. And so
Yeah.
I'll break them up and we'll do call and response. Sometimes I bring my goatskin drum and we would play the drums and they would sing the song. So it's all about engagement for me. So as a singer songwriter, storyteller, I want to bring that alive for my students. And then they come up to our mangrove nursery, which I'm in charge of, and they get community service because it's a requirement in order to graduate community service.
Okay.
Some high
Like
schools
for out
have
of
to
like
have
high school or out of like just regular elementary
high
school?
school.
High school.
High
Okay.
school. I think they have to, some schools have up to 75 hours community service.
Perfect.
So
Gotcha.
after school, some days a week, they'll come and do community service. And then I get some little ones who they don't have quite that attention span. So I bring out the drums, or I play hide and seek, or
Yeah.
I have little worksheets with them. And, we go over some environmental stuff just so I could, bait them to get them in my youth program.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it works.
Yeah.
I have to be a character to get all this stuff done, and I love it. I never, like I told you earlier, I stumbled into this career field,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it chose me. I didn't choose it; it
Mm-hmm.
chose me. And environmentalism, I always thought that it was, tree huggers, or look at this one, and they just, but then I became that. I became the person that's protecting these trees. I became the person that's advocating clean, fishable, drinkable, swimmable waters.
Right.
Because again, I work for Water Keepers Bahamas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I became the person that's talking to fishermen and telling them like, hey, some practices we really shouldn't do that because it's damaging to the reef. Or
Right.
talking to developers and telling them like, it's a way for you to do this without
Yeah.
harming, all of this stuff. And we get called everything,
Oh, I'm sure.
but at the end of the day, when there is no food, when there is no, the protection from these storms, the coastal protection, at the end of the day, all the things that make us the Bahamas, like when it's gone, then what? Like
Yeah.
after Hurricane Dorian, in fact, I want to say we had a hurricane, I think it was Hurricane Matthew 2004, so, and we were without power for 2.5 months.
2.5 months.
Months.
Wow.
And all Bahamians know that when there's a hurricane, the first thing you do besides secure your property is fill up jugs with water.
Mm-hmm.
Fill up jugs, buckets, everything with fresh water. Because at some point the water's going to turn off, right?
Mm.
And so the next thing to do is if you have a chest freezer, you're going to take all that stuff out and you're going to start barbecuing everything because without power, it's going to spoil.
It's just gonna spoil. Yeah. At
Some
least you
people
can
have
eat it there.
solar,
Yeah.
some people have like um, generators, so it'll last a bit longer. But
Yeah.
general
But
rule of
still.
thumb is you want to eat all that stuff, and
Yeah.
then water is rationed. And bathing water, you need have to reuse some water. If you bathe in a bucket of water, but you shouldn't. That's too much water.
Yeah.
You then turn around and use that to flush the toilets. But what
Right.
happened during those 2.5 months? Most people had to take to the ocean. They had to go and swim in the ocean because we couldn't arbitrarily just, oh, I want to use all this water and take a long shot. No, you couldn't do it,
No.
you
Yeah.
know? And the good part is the ocean provided food for us. So stores weren't open at all, and when they were, it's limited resources.
Yeah.
So a lot of people went back to fishing. Um,
Wow.
Crawfish, lobster time, like we call it,
Yeah.
all the times that it happened, like where we were without power and stuff, the lobster was walking. So people had lobsters for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ocean provided
Yeah.
in a big way. So
Yeah.
it's a part of our livelihood. It's a part of our diet. Again, it's
It's part of
something
the
that we take
survival
for
if you think
granted.
about it.
Yeah, coconut
Yeah.
water. We had coconuts and coconut water and seafood, and
Right.
that's how we lived.
Yeah. And not bad too. That's not bad living on seafood and coconut oil. But obviously, not having power, not being able to, clean properly and do
Hmm.
laundry, like it really makes us. It really shows how reliant we are on just general power and the access to water. But on an island system, where that may not happen all the time, especially
Hmm.
with some of these storms that are coming through, that can get hairy at times. It can get really difficult at times to live in there. So,
Yep.
so now as this program has been built for 13 years and it's expanding, do you find more people are even like the parents are doing more environmental things? More environmentally friendly things.
Yes. We've had a few parents come in and they say like, "What are you teaching my child?" Oh my gosh, because they're coming into the home now and they're saying like, "Hey, like we might not have recycling, but you need to put that away. Like, or if a
Mhm.
parent, she's like, I don't do it, but for some reason she went to throw some trash out of the window, and her child was like, hey,
Yeah.
let's make smart choices.
Right.
you know,
It's true.
and they are the one that's enforcing the message in the home now.
Yeah.
They're the one, like, all the stuff that we're teaching them, they're now going into the home, because when we talk to adults, it's kind of in one ear out the next, or adults are pretty much set in their way sometimes.
For
And
sure.
so it's through their
Yeah.
children, like, telling them stuff. So we've had successes in that way. We've had parents
Yeah.
come back and they had to come back and tell us. Um, so now they're making smarter choices.
Yeah.
Um, we had a plastic ban, like a single-use plastic ban, last year that was enforced in the Bahamas. And so the students are going to the supermarkets and grocery stores, and parents are like grabbing for the plastic bag, and it was like, no,
Nope.
let's purchase the reusable bags
Yeah.
and let's
Yeah.
use those. And the parents are, sometimes they get really upset, and they're like, yes, but I don't have the time, and
Hmm.
and so it becomes a thing where, um it's like, okay, if we don't want to be that guy or that person
Right.
to be like, you, because we
Yeah.
all have to live, but
Exactly.
we just want to encourage it. If you can, just do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I saw your podcast where you're talking about the straws.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we got some parents, they're buying their steel straws, and they're like walking
Yeah.
around, like it becomes a fashion, a statement now. Like they're
Yeah.
going into
For
their
sure.
purses and like, hey, look what I have, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And
Different
I
colors and everything. Yeah.
different colors, and I also experienced, like, what you talked about, like these messy straws that melt before you finish your drink, or break up, and just, it's like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so we empathize with that, but it gets us thinking outside of the box, looking at
Hmm.
companies that, have a sturdier product,
Yep.
and
Just
realizing
innovation.
that just innovation, yeah, it helps us to be
Yeah.
innovative.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
that
this is
works.
This is amazing, and I love to see the work that you're doing with Bahamian waterkeepers. I love to see the environmental programs. I love to see the work with children, and then that, going into the homes, and the parents are coming back and be like, this is fantastic. We're learning. They learn because we know kids are adamant about when they learn something, they want to do it. They want to
Yeah.
contribute to it because they see it sometimes as black and white, and they
Hmm.
may not see the gray area in between, their complexities between, but that helps a lot of times when parents call you, or when kids call out their parents, and it's happened to me, it's happened to everybody, but it's important. I think it is important because we're leaving this to our next generation, and we
Yes.
have to do the best we can to ensure that we leave it in the best condition as possible, so they have an easier job than we left it with. So I really appreciate, Javan, you coming on the podcast to discuss this, to
Hmm.
introduce us, and I'd love to have you back on to talk more about the program in the
Yeah.
future, because I think this is something that we need to hear more and more about, and to have that hopefulness and that optimism towards the ocean, and our younger generation that's coming through, and being able to be more protective of the ocean. So thank you so much for being on the program.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Thank you, Javan, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to have you on the podcast and be able to talk about music, hear a little bit of your talent, and also talk about how you get kids interested in the ocean, especially with, just as he mentioned, there was this persona that the ocean is dangerous and it's nerve-wracking to go in it, even with his own experiences in scuba diving and understanding what it's like to be in the ocean. Once you're there, it is life-changing. And once we connect with the ocean, we realize how important the ocean is to us and what we need to do to be able to protect it better, and so that continues to be a part of us and continues to provide services for us, like protection, just like mangroves does for a lot of island communities, just like salt marshes does for a lot of coastal communities in temperate worlds, and a lot of other coastal communities, coastal habitats does for coastal communities. We just don't see it as much because we're not out in nature as much. And I feel that's a big part of conservation, is to connect with nature so that you understand and you appreciate more about the beauty and protection that nature brings us. And that's really the message for this show. So if you wanted to learn more about Javan, you can do so and just look in the show notes, and you can click on the links to his website as well as social media pages, and you can find out more about his music as well. It's always great to be able to support local artists, especially those who are in it for the ocean. So I love that. And if you have any questions or comments about this episode, you can get a hold of me through Instagram. DM me at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify. And if you're watching this, if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, don't forget, hit that follow button or subscribe button and listen to more episodes of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. That's it for me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin from the True North Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.